welcome to ALTBAYS Show. This is show number 92. Oh yeah, baby. We are having fun, all right, I'll tell you. We live stream every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 p.m. If you're watching us live right now, it's because you are on YouTube. If you are on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to our channel, okay? Great way to support the platform. You can also become a member of our ALTBAYS channel, which means that you give us a little bit of money to keep things going, to keep this show alive. It starts with like $5. You can give as much as you want, and we will be very happy with your donation. When you go on the live chat, you can ask questions, you can send comments, and you can also make a one-off donation. It's up to you, okay? Another great way to support us is to talk about our shows to your friends, to your family. Word of mouth really works, okay? If you like it, and if you don't like it, it works too, okay? We also have the ALTBAYS Clips. Is a second channel where we break down the chats so you can watch 5 minutes, 7 minutes of the conversation, and then if you like, you can go for the whole thing, man. You can find ALTBAYS on all the social media platforms. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Just go there, ALTBAYS, and you will find us. It's been a pleasure doing this. We really love the connection that we create with people. Networking is very important, but we're getting much more out of this. We always felt like part of this community. Thank you so much for having us as part of the Aotearoa community, and we feel like we can give a lot in exchange, so support goes a long way. Bless you, Len.
Excuse me.
All good. On my left, eating the food that was supposed to be eaten during the show, but he couldn't wait. He was too excited. He was loving too much the vegan food, plant-based. How are you, Brett?
Very good, thanks. I've actually 2 more mouthfuls left.
It's delicious, isn't it?
It's probably the best vegan meal I've had, I would have to say.
That's good to hear.
And they didn't pay me to say that.
Nah, they didn't. Lot of love. I'm going to talk about Lot of Love in a minute, but they are shouting us this amazing meal. As you can see, it's a yellow Balinese curry, and it's just like spot on.
Beautiful. I don't know what your garbage rice is like, but I'm eating mine with coleslaw.
Yeah.
I'm only saying garbage rice because I'm on a diet. But it's really nice over coleslaw.
Very nice, eh?
Yeah, it was a nice alternative.
Yeah, man. There you go. So Tanya Arnold came to our show, I would say maybe 3 weeks ago, and she's on a healing mission. For the people who don't know who she is, she's finding a lot of pleasure and feeling better after learning about plant-based eating. So
well, I feel better after eating.
It's good, eh? And she's doing this. She's teaching. She's giving classes in Fitsianga. And she sells amazing stuff, man. The website's pretty cool. So if you are watching us right now and you are curious to see what she's up to, have a look at Lot of Love, AOTTA, lotoflove.co.nz, and on Facebook, it's the same name. How are you, Brett?
I'm very good, thank you.
Can you talk a little bit while I have a spoon full of curry?
Oh, yeah? What do you want to know about? My diet?
Your ear. That doesn't have a...
Yeah, I forgot to put my ear jewellery in tonight after having a shower, so that was a little bit funny, showing up with 2 little cat bum holes on my ears instead of the plugs that I usually have.
We can't see them.
Yeah.
We can't see
Can you
them.
show us, Brett, please, for the people who are watching us on YouTube? That one.
Here, look.
That one is yours.
These are with her.
Whoa! Is it too disgusting to ask to put my finger in the hole?
No, it's all
Or
right.
it's Are you ready? This is gonna be epic. I'm not comfortable, but I'm gonna do it. Oh! It felt great.
So that was a little bit funny because I got here and then I was like, what am I gonna do now? Oh well.
When did you
headphones cover them?
When did you start stretching these? How does it work? Like, do you change the size of the thing?
Yeah, so it's got I got my ears pierced when I was young, youngish, 18 or something like that, 19. And then just started putting like tapered things through them until it got bigger and bigger.
Got pretty big.
This is this might be the biggest I've had. I haven't made them real big or anything.
Do you want to go a little bit
Maybe
further? Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen those guys who have it hanging on their shoulders?
Oh,
That's
I have
crazy.
seen that. I don't know anyone with that big, but I got some friends who've got some pretty big ones. You know.
What about the ones that they make a hole in their lip?
I personally do not like that at all.
Yeah, not your thing.
Nah,
Wouldn't do that.
nah.
Damn,
It's pretty out there, but
a bit hardcore.
I don't know how
yeah.
it would be to eat. You know,
True.
you'd put something in it, I suppose. Put your finger in it while you eat. I don't know.
Yeah. Would you get one, Len?
No.
A piercing on a here.
But you're very kind to offer. Thank
Yeah?
you. But no.
Oh, I was not sure about piercing myself, your mouth, but I could give it a go if you can.
No.
No.
Still no.
Len Salt here with us. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Thanks for coming.
I'd love to be here. Thank you.
Do you like the space?
I just adore it. I think you guys, and we were talking before the show, I really admire what you've done. I think it's inspirational and it's given me ideas, not for copying what you've done, but for the innovation that you've shown to take a small space and to create what you've done here out of nothing. And we talked about the reach that you've got now is global. You know, I could go and watch your program and listen to your podcast from anywhere in the world. And I think people do. And you would know that from what your stats but I think it's inspirational what you've done. So we talked a little bit about, you know, ideas for developing the Coromandel in a way that is what I call low impact. So coming up with ideas that use innovation and fresh ideas and small startup companies, but they don't have a big environmental footprint, for example. So you're not having to build infrastructure. You're not having to have trucks and containers going past and cranes and things. And the fact that you've built something, I want to say small, but with a big reach, I think is inspirational. So well done. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I wanna get a segue from what you just said. But just before we go there, I just wanna say something important for our audience. Linda Chimondley, she's running a daily meditation. It's something that is part of the ECAM World Peace Festival 2022. ECAM spells EKAM. So the best way to get more information about it is to go on her Facebook page, ECAM Coromandel. It's a pretty cool guided meditation that she's doing, and there's any specific date that they get people from all over the world to meditate together, which is pretty cool. And every year reaches more and more people. I think they had like 40 million people or something last year. And
Is that all?
And they want more, yeah. Pretty cool, like.
Could be 40 million in one after this.
Hey, I know, right? So just have a look, no charges, all welcome. She's doing it every day. So yeah, have a look on her Facebook page for that. And as I mentioned at the start, supporting our beautiful show, lot of love, shouting this beautiful dinner for us. They will be showing, their contacts will be showing on our TV. But if you're listening to us, lotalove.co.nz. Tanya is rock and roll, man. She cooks amazing, beautiful stuff. And thanks for the food, Tanya.
Beautiful.
Yeah, even the rice has got like coriander and stuff on it.
Would be good for Fabian, eh?
Yeah.
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 Len, when you talk about innovation, that's a cool thing because, so I'll put two questions there. I want you to tell us what the great power is, and I'm kind of gonna give a bit of an answer, but I want to hear your words. When you're dealing with older people, how do you get them
On the motorbikes.
how to? Great, thank you. How do you get them to be innovative? How do you tell people the importance of paying attention to what you just mentioned now?
First of all, Brett, you know that old people invented motorbikes.
Oh, true.
You do know that?
Yeah. So they're already good at riding them. They're just,
Absolutely.
Okay.
My wife, who you know, I don't think you've met Swago, but Taylor and Leo know Swago because she's a teacher at the school. When she was a young person in living in London, she's English, she had a motorcycle with a sidecar. and she was a solo mum, had a young son, and
I thought you were going to say you rode in the sidecar.
No, and
all right.
she would have been about 20 years old at the time, and she carried her young son in the sidecar with a little helmet around the streets of London, Richmond, and she was quite well known around the town for carrying her son around in the sidecar. So yes, old people invented motorcycles. You ask about and I guess the question is the disconnect between people of a certain generation and technology, and that is, I'm not going to speak on behalf of Grey Power because there is a process for being a spokesperson for Grey Power. I'm just going to talk about my own experience in working with people, older people in this community, and it's a common problem right throughout the country. And it's technology, the changes in technology are really impacting on people as they get older and as the technology leaves them behind. Excuse me. So the most common issue and the biggest problem is banking. When you think about that, so a lot of older people grew up in the age where they had a bank book or they had a checkbook, and that's how they paid their bills, the power bill and the phone bill and whatever, or their mortgage or whatever, and you paid everything with a check. Now, checks no longer exist in this country.
Are they gone, are they?
They're gone. Completely.
I didn't even know.
No, checks have completely gone.
I've never written a check, so...
No, and so there's that technology and that generational disconnect. But what it means is that you've got this big gap with older people who no longer have the way that they can use their money and to pay their bills as they always did, so they don't know what to do. So when they're presented with that challenge, well, the obvious answer is, well, you use internet banking. Everyone uses internet banking. But that presents another challenge for older people because they're not computer savvy, and there's organisations like SeniorNet which help them through that process. But as we all know, how many scams and phishing emails and things have you had on your phone and on your computer recently?
Yeah, it's constant.
It's
literally constant.
Constant.
Yeah.
So imagine if you're 85, 87 years old and you're getting this stuff and you didn't grow up with these things and you don't know how to deal with them and you don't have family nearby to reach out. It's frightening. It's frightening. How do you deal with that? How do you navigate your way through? And the reality is, I know people in this town who have been scammed out of their money because these organisations and individuals who are targeting older people are ruthless. They've got access to a lot of technology, and it's a constant battle to stay ahead of that. So that's one of the big issues with older people is how do we help them through their banking and managing their money in a way that they stay safe and they feel secure and they can get on with their daily lives. Yeah.
Have you heard about Grey Power before?
I heard about it on another podcast, and yeah, I hadn't really heard it before, but I figured it wasn't a criminal organisation. I figured it was what it is, But yeah, no, I heard about it was maybe only 3 or 4 weeks ago, though, to be honest.
Grey Power's got about 45,000 members in the country throughout. We've got about 350 members in Mercury Bay, and there are Grey Power organisations right across the country. And it's a support group for older people. You can join Grey Power at the age of 50, and then you get access to cheap electricity and cheap broadband. So the cut in age is a lot younger than what most people realise. And I find it a great organisation just for helping and supporting older people because, once you get to a certain age, you need those support networks around you. So it's important to have access to those people that are in your area and in your same age group. So.
Do you feel like we value what older people know, the knowledge? We were having a chat with a Japanese friend who came here on the weekends, and he was, well, everybody knows that Japan has a big, well, everybody knows now, you know, an older population, and he was saying how there's a lot of respect involved. You know, they carry a lot, and you know, it's not hard if you read a little bit of history of like how indigenous people in a lot of tribes, they would protect at all costs, you know, like the elderly, and I think Maori is a big example of that. And how do you feel, Len? Do you feel like we give the value that all the people deserve?
Interesting question, a really good question, Leo. And I guess the answer to that is, how do you answer the question we? So it really depends, a lot of the answer depends on which cultural group you come from. If you come from a cultural group that is whānau connected, for example, or Asian connected, you have a different way of supporting and looking after your elderly people than if you come from a more sort of Western culture like English or American, for example. And I think over the years we've seen this disconnect, and it comes back to the focus that happened probably a couple of 100 years ago on the nuclear family. So where you had mum, dad and 2 kids or 3 kids or whatever, and then you had suburbanisation, you got this, and I'm a good example. I grew up in West Auckland. I'm part Maori from Ngāpuhi in the north and from Tainui in the Waikato. But where I grew up, it was a suburban area of West Auckland, pretty poor area. My mother didn't drive, so my father worked on the wharf, so he had the car and he was gone from the family a lot of the time. So my mother had no connection to her whānau or her family for years and years and years. It was just separated. And I've often looked back at that and thought, well, that was a very sad way to build a society, that you've got this disconnect between the support and the family that you need. And a lot of it was driven by cars. You know, everything was centered around the motor car. You know, you go back to other cultures where you've got a village culture and you've got a village centric society, and you've got people congregating in markets and you've got that support there. But historically, once the cars came in and everything was suburbanized, people were disconnected from their whānau, their families, their communities. And I think we're still paying the price for that to a large degree. And, you know, you've got elderly people who end up quite isolated, but not just elderly people. You've got young people with young families, and they are isolated from communities. So that's something that really resonates with me. I think getting back in touch with communities, having community support around you, it's absolutely vital. To a healthy society, you've got to have strong communities. You've got to have people working together with, you know, common aims and ideals, and just helping each other out on every level, whether it's arts and culture, whether it's work, whether it's social well-being, whether it's community activities, safety, security. But communities are stronger if they work together and help each other out.
I could be wrong, but I think a lot of because you focus a lot on the arts, you talk a lot about it and you live it, right? Yeah. You're a musician, you ran a music shop, you write poetry and all that stuff. You can tell us a little bit more about that. But I feel like some people would be skeptical of an artist to become a politician, you know, like, oh, does he know about the numbers? What about the finances, you know, like, and all those things. Like, how are you navigating this part of, you know, pushing something that you believe in, you know, a lot of people do, but then there's the other side of, oh, what about that?
Yeah, an interesting question. So I'm one of these strange people that absolutely loves and adores numbers and spreadsheets and analysis and financial stuff, and I'll spend hours drilling down into financial reports and spreadsheets and looking for stuff that makes sense or that don't make sense. I personally don't see a disconnect between that and the arts, and some of the most famous people, scientific and mathematical people in the world, like Albert Einstein was a violinist. So I think there's a very close connection between science and mathematical pursuits and the arts as well. But I've got this passion to see the arts be a very, very strong and vibrant part of the economic fabric of not just our community but the country. At the moment, arts and recreation contribute about $23 million a year to the economy of the Coromandel, and not many people know that. I think that's a fantastic contribution. With Creative Coromandel, we've been scoping arts events, galleries, artists right across the community, and we haven't finished that job. It's part of what we're doing at the moment. We're up well over 200 on our list of arts businesses, events, galleries. Every single one of those is either a small business or a cooperative or people working together to contribute to the economic well-being and make a positive contribution to the economy of this district. And it spreads out. It goes, if you've got a very strong, vibrant arts community, you've got strong tourism, you've got strong hospitality, you've got strong food service, because everything flows and everything connects. So I don't see a disconnect at all between those things. But I'm unusual.
You have something there?
Oh no, I'm just waiting for Three Waters to come up. Yeah,
For Three Waters to come up. Okay.
So you're doing. I like the arts talk.
You like the arts talk? I was reading on your website, Len, that you ran a food business, like creating ingredients and all that thing. What's more challenging to create new food ingredients or to talk to people?
Yeah, they're different challenges. You have to be, in some ways, a different person, but when you're working with food, it's another creative industry. But, creative industries, like any other industry, live or die on the balance sheet and on the profit and loss. So if you're an artist, or if you're a chef, or if you're creating a new food product that you want to put out, a vegan curry or something that you want to get into the supermarkets, you have to know how to do that in a way that's financially viable. If you're an artist but you can't afford to buy, canvas or paints or brushes or whatever, then you're not going to survive very long as an artist. So you've got to pay attention to the economic realities. So often it comes back to that. One of the things that with Creative Coromandel, we've gone through a period of restructuring recently, which has been very, very positive for the organisation. And I've been clear with everyone that I'm involved within Creative Coromandel and outside, because I don't know if you know how Creative Coromandel's structured. Creative Coromandel is
Take us through, please. Yeah.
So the Thames-Coromandel District Council has an arts strategy, which was put together in around 2016. That arts strategy is driven by a group of volunteers, which is Creative Coromandel. TCDC fund it to about $15,000 a year directly to help support admin and stuff like that. And the rest of that funding comes from grants and fundraising and things like that.
Do they get enough money?
No. So
if you become mayor, will you upgrade that $15,000?
So what I'll do is I'll present a case to the council for supporting an economic development plan for the arts across the Coromandel, and the first step for that will be a full-time chief executive for Creative Coromandel, which will allow the chief executive to drive the potential for Creative Coromandel to really put us on the map. I want us to be the arts destination for New Zealand. And we were talking before we came on air about Thames, for example, which is the gateway to the Coromandel. Thames is an hour and a quarter from half of the population of New Zealand. Now, that's absolutely extraordinary. And most of the access to the gateway to the Coromandel is flat. There's no hills. So once you get to Thames, if you want to go to Whitianga or Whangamatara or want to go to Coromandel, you've got some hills and you've got some challenging roads, but aren't they stunningly beautiful? And wouldn't you want to do it? And people do.
That Thames Coast is a lovely drive.
The Crimson Coast. And one of my favourite bands is named after that Crimson Coast. And they're Thames-based, band. Fantastic. So, yes, I will support putting in place a full-time arts manager. And the purpose of that position will be to really take that $23 million and see where we can take it, and we'll put some targeted objectives in place. So it might be 25, it might be $30 million. We'll do that with the team. But everything that you guys do here is a really good example of what can be done with the arts, because Taylor's sitting there behind the desk and he's got all the tech stuff. But what you've created is an example of an artwork, and it's got global reach, as we talked about earlier on. Why can't we support that? And you guys have got a great business going here. Why can't we support that and expand it right across the Coromandel Peninsula?
I'm curious to see how that would unfold, because I've been here for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
I try to get involved with artistic movements when I'm aware of them.
Yep.
But I also see so many people trying and giving up because the locals don't like the noise. The locals don't find the space.
Mm-hmm.
This is not the place for this. This is not the place for that. And then I feel like it doesn't sound very inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a strong part of the community going for it and understanding that it's so beautiful. And if you had a little bit of music every now and then, a festival here and there, and more kids playing the streets and more paintings all over, where's the graffiti? Where's, it's not tagging. There's a big difference between them. If you don't know, Google it. But yeah, I'm interested to see how you would manage these changes, because we all love the arts. Everybody likes to have a connection with it, but I think people see it as different art forms, different ways of enjoying art. So
you're absolutely right, and that's what's fantastic about the arts. If we had one form of the arts and it was one size fits all, I mean, how boring would that be? That's not art. So the idea is not to change people to make them like art. The idea is to enable artists to be what they want to be and to create what they want to create, but do it in such a way that they're supported to do it, and we're unlocking the economic potential of what they can do. So, a really good example that I like to use is when you've got people that become very, very wealthy, what's the first thing that they go out and do?
Swim in their pools of cash.
They buy
and
art.
buy art.
They buy art.
they buy art.
Seriously, they buy
We
art.
talked about that last week.
And they go into the music shop and they buy the $20,000 guitar because they can afford it. So the connection between art and everything that we do. I mean,
do they buy because it's a commodity or because they like the art?
Sometimes both. Sometimes, and I've had this when I had a music shop. People would walk in and buy a guitar, and I'd say, "Well, are you a guitarist?" "No." "Why are you buying this $8,000 guitar?" "Well, it's a collectible." "What are you going to do with it?" "I'm going to put it in the closet and wait for it to appreciate in value." Really? That's what I don't know. It takes all kinds, but it's not for us to tell people what to like or not to like. Sometimes I think if you close your eyes and imagine a world without art, all right? So no music, no television, no movies. No, if you're reading a book or a magazine, it's all just black and white print on the page, no graphics. You know, it's a very sad world that we would have without art. And I think there's a lot of potential to develop that already exists in our people and our community and make it really work for us. It's just something that excites me personally, but it also makes financial sense and economic sense as well.
I wanna change topics, Brad, because I can see you reaching there.
No, it's just that art is outside of my wheelhouse. I'm not an artist. Although, have you seen this AI art out there? There's
just recently,
Mid-Journey. Have you seen that?
Mm.
That's pretty phenomenal.
Can you tell us what it is?
Oh, it's like if you know what Discord is. It's like a chat. They got servers. You can chat on it, type. You can talk.
Yep.
You know, whatever. So it's a Discord server, and you can put in prompts of the different ideas.
Yep.
Sorry. Yeah, you do this every time. I still don't know where the microphone goes. You put in the prompts of the different ideas, and the AI will make the art for you. So you might be like, I want, you know, an elephant with the head of a flamingo balancing on the head of a pin, photorealistic or something, and it will bring up something. It'll make that art. Like it's absolutely crazy, and like you got to try and not have an idea in mind already of what it's going to look like, because it'll never come out however it looks like, what you think it might look like. But you can scroll through and then make adjustments to the wording and come up with all different ideas and click on. It takes a minute and it'll come up with 4 pictures, 4 variations, and you can click on a variation and go from there. So it'll make 4 more that are related to that one that you liked, you know, because it'll give you 4 sort of different things, and you go through and then until you find one you like, and then you click a button, the upscale button, and that will make it like higher res and more detailed, and you can download it.
Wow.
And it's all done through AI. It's pretty phenomenal. Some of the stuff that comes out of there is absolutely pathetic, because I had to go on it and I was terrible at it. But some of the stuff that comes out of there is phenomenal. Like I'm like, who made? When I first saw it, I was like, look at this art. Like, who made it? And it's just like the missus was showing me on YouTube. I was like, it's just a computer. Computer made it.
I think the first reaction for most people, not being judgmental, but just trying to have an idea, I think some people would criticize that by saying they're like, oh, but that's you know, what are humans gonna do? But you could also look from the other side and saying maybe it's the time when we will appreciate much more a piece of art that is done by a human. Yeah. Is that true?
Well, some people would call that, probably wouldn't call that art, I suppose, because it's not made by a sentient being. I don't know.
But if you don't know, if you just walk
if you don't know,
you're getting into the definition of art, and I have my own personal definitions of art.
Tell us.
And well, the example that I like to use is and it's a music one, where you have people that walk into a room with their instruments and there's no sound, there's nothing. And with their instruments and their voices, they create something out of nothing. So leaving out the computers, I mean, computers have a part to play, obviously, because it's been developed and computer, started with the synthesizers and things, and electric guitar, Leo Fender before that. But essentially, when you're creating something out of nothing, then you're creating art. And my personal definition of an artist is somebody that is so driven that they can't not do what they do. You know, so if you said to Leo tomorrow, hey mate, from now on you're never going to play the drums again, how do you feel about that? So Leo is driven to create his music and to be the musician by something that's inside him that he probably doesn't have a whole lot of control over. You know, it's there. It's just there. And I've seen artists who are in different places that create stuff out of absolutely nothing. You give them 2 sticks and a leaf and a piece of plastic, and they will create an artwork out of that. I can't do it. It's not my thing. But so this ability to see things that others can't see, and to create things that come from absolutely nothing, or
It's not
ordinary
really
things.
from nothing though, isn't it? Because you're putting on like past experiences and you know, like we're computers after all. I'm only pushing back on it because
that's a good point, because music in particular is generated from, you know, you sit down and you play the blues. You're not the first person that's ever played the blues. There's a whole history. So, but then from there you can start to create your own individual things. But there's so many. That's the fascinating thing about art. There are so many different levels. There are so many different aspects to it. You know, it's hard to define. And who would want to? Why would you want to?
You know what all artists need, Brett?
what, the paintbrush.
Water.
Ah,
Now you go, man. You ask.
what was I asking?
About water.
Oh yes.
Okay.
So I don't know. I don't know why we have to have so many waters, but what are we going to do with this 3 waters? Is it something that, I mean, the councils are against it? No, let me rephrase that. Certain councils are against it. Would that be a correct assumption? Councils. So we had the other guy on, Freya, and he explained it to me that that, you know, there's councils that are doing a good job of managing their water.
Yep.
Would probably be a lot more reluctant to go into it because they've put a lot of taxpayer money into the infrastructure and not getting a lot back for it, and then having to support the other infrastructures around that may not be so good. Would that be sort of I'm paraphrasing.
Of course. I understand.
So do you want to give us
saying.
maybe a bit of a rundown and why
Yep.
certain councils might be opposed to it, and why you want 3 waters to go through?
I don't think any council,
whatever your way is.
I don't think any council is opposed to 3 waters if you just say the 2 words 3 waters, because all councils have responsibilities for 3 waters. All councils have a responsibility to deliver drinking water, wastewater, and manage stormwater. The problem is that it's not a level playing field. If you look at a council like Hamilton, for example, which is right next to the Waikato River, and they've got 1 water treatment plant and 1 wastewater treatment plant. So all they got to do is drop a snorkel into the Waikato River and pump it out, put it through the through the water treatment plant, and out through the pipes to all the households. Done, easy.
Don't forget the waste goes back into that said river for the next town down.
It's treated anyway. So, but let's separate those out. So let's just talk about drinking water, for example. In the Thames-Coromandel district, we've got over 400 kilometres of coastline, and it's challenging coastline too. It's got hills and rivers and coastlines, and it's not easy to connect those. So you can't have one water treatment plant and connect it all to all the towns that need water. And we've got 30,000 ratepayers. So the cost for us to supply drinking water to all of our people is significantly higher than it is for another council that has much easier access to their water and much easier methods of distribution.
Especially a city council, right?
Yeah.
Compared to, say, like the Waikato district, which has got
Absolutely.
different towns and so forth. Yeah.
So it's not a level playing field in terms of the cost to supply that infrastructure. And that's one of the reasons why the proposal for the 3 waters legislation was to basically put in place systems which would level the playing field so that they got more of a balance between the councils that could do it more economically and the councils like ours which could do it at a much higher cost per ratepayer. So that's how it started, and then it was the Havelock North thing where people got poisoned, and so that was what it had been building up before that, but that was the trigger. Now the problem is that the proposed legislation that's coming through at the moment is, I think, has been not well put together. I've read the legislation, and I showed you earlier on. It's a document that thick. I personally think it's clumsy. It's not well constructed, and it's going to be very difficult to administer. And what it's going to do is it's going to leave us with one vote on in a table of 22 councils, which is going to make it difficult for us to get any kind of priority in terms of spend on that infrastructure. But we need to come back to the reason why this became a talking point in the first place. And you remember back in 2019 and 20, we had a drought here that lasted 7 months. And we all got hurt from that, we, especially the elderly people here.
And the permanent residents.
Yeah, we struggled for 7 months to keep the taps turned on. So at that stage, our Residents and Ratepayers Association was formed, and we formed a Water Action Committee, and we started talking to council and saying, okay, how do we fix this? What do you guys, let's have a look at the long-term plan, what's in there. Surely there's a water supply for Whitianga somewhere in the next 10 years. You're going to start looking at it. What are the options? There was nothing there. And we were really quite concerned about that, and we thought, hang on a second, nothing in the plan for the next 10 years. How do we fix this? Because we can't just go around and around having droughts and not being able to supply water.
And adding more and more houses to the
issue
too, right?
Yeah, and we know every day there's more houses and development going on here. So at a personal level, I was pretty upset about this, so I started having a go at council and started asking some tough questions. And that got a reaction, but after a while we sat down as a team and we thought, okay, is this really going to solve the problem? Why don't we get a bit more constructive? And we started doing some research, and then we sat down with council and we sat down with community board, and we said, okay, how do we solve this? And so one of our team members really got stuck in and did some research and found that there was a possible solution for Whitianga. We've now fine-tuned that proposal.
Could you elaborate on the solution? Just a tad?
Just a little bit. So
in general terms.
Yeah, okay. So what a
lot of us don't know why the drought, why the taps were at threat of drying up.
Yeah.
Whether it was a storage issue or whether we could treat water fast enough, or whether whether we were taking too much water from the river or whatnot.
So it's a combination of things. First of all, our water storage in Whitianga is 1 day. We've got 1 day of backup storage. Oh, wow. All of our water comes from the Whangamarora River, which goes down underneath by the 309 road, under the bridge there. All of our water comes from that, and we are allowed to take a certain amount of water according to a Waikato Regional Council consent. During that drought, the level got so low that we were in breach of that consent, and we were in breach of that consent for a period of about 6 months. Now, Regional Council they worked with us on it because they had no choice. They couldn't say, well, you can't take any water because the town has no other option. It's one water supply. So we worked our way through that, and it was tough. And at the time, people who were on tank water were getting 10,000 litre tanks initially from Matarangi, and then Matarangi ran short, and then they started to go to Thames, and then Thames ran short, and then they were going to Hamilton, and it was costing them $1,100 for a 10,000 litre tank of water, and they were waiting about 6 weeks. So this was serious. This was a big deal. And so we really started working with council, and there was 2 levels, 2 things we had to do. First of all, council had to go to Waikato Regional Council and get the consent altered so that they were able to take more water in the case of a drought. And it didn't alter the health of the river, but it just allowed us to take more water. We still didn't have any way of storing it. So the other thing that we started doing is we started working seriously on trying to identify another water supply. And what we discovered, and this wasn't general knowledge, it's a matter of public record, but council owns 650 acres of land just outside the town up on the Mowai Hills. Now, you know the dairy factory? It's the dairy. What was the old dairy factory is now the Mercury Bay Museum.
Oh, yeah.
Down, right?
Oh, yeah.
Down on the Esplanade, the white building, yeah. That was the old dairy factory. Before we had a water treatment plant, all the water for the dairy factory used to come from the water catchment up in the Mowai Hills. And so one of our guys, an amazing guy called John Kempthorne, put his boots on and put his swanny on and got a machete, and he tramped up all through those hills. He's in his 70s, but he's as fit as a fiddle, I tell you. And he found all the old water catchment weirs, the dams, the taps, the valves and things that were still there. And this is land that's never been farmed. Now, if you've got land that's had dairy farming on it and you try and use that for water catchment, you've got a problem, because it's very difficult to get the byproducts of dairy farming out of your water supply. This is real virgin bush. It's never been farmed. Wow. 650 acres, and guess who owns it? Council. Yeah. So we thought, well, this is a good place to start. Let's talk to council about what the potential is for that. And we managed to get them to, as a small residents and ratepayers group, we managed to get them to put some money into the long-term plan for a formal investigation to come up with another water supply, and that investigation is now started. It's underway right now.
That's good.
And we should have the initial results of that in about 4 weeks. Now, that's really exciting, because it's taken 3 years to get to this stage. And that's the thing about council, and that's the thing about local government. The wheels turn really slowly. If you want to make a change, if you want to make a significant contribution, you've got to start early, and you've got to start from community level and work your way through, because it's a very slow process.
Is it frustrating that you guys had to go through that and find out? Wouldn't it be expected
Kind of.
It is, eh?
Kind of.
Sucks, eh?
Kind of, but hey, it happens. You just you take the positives, and the positive out of this is that once we sat down and started working with council staff and community board, and we stopped banging heads, and we let them know that we were frustrated and nobody wanted to go another drought without water. Once we started working together, it got constructive and it got positive, and we got some budget allocated for the investigation, and we got some results. And so we've now got very, very good. And so you've got a situation where even if we go 3 waters, and even if the government under the new entities takes control of our water. Supply and management and assets, which is probably going to happen under the current legislation, we have done all the groundwork already, and we're what they call shovel ready. So we're ready for the next stage. We've done the work. All they've got to do is push the go button and throw some money at it to get the water supply in place.
Do you think they will?
I have no doubt whatsoever. Yep.
Yeah.
And if I'm mayor, I'll make sure they do.
Oh, good.
Yeah, that's part of my job.
I'm voting for you now.
It's part of my job. We cannot, imagine if we had a water supply issue in Whirianga and we couldn't get water in here. You can't get tankers in here if you've got, flooding and roads out.
Yeah, well, that drought was an interesting time, because, like the
Thanks, Leo.
The gardens were dead, and you had people who were really pulling their weight to try and conserve water, and I also knew of people who also filled their brand new swimming pool in that time. But it was a hard time for a lot of people, because a lot of, like you say, the elderly are very house proud and things like garden proud, and like my mother-in-law, she let a lot of her plants just die,
really?
Because
that's heartbreaking.
It is, and it's like they've been looking after them for years and stuff, and they die, and it was a tough time. So if we can avoid something like that in the future, that'd be great. We'd touch wood, we haven't had anything to that degree.
We've been fortunate. But so two things. First of all, last couple of summers we've had more rainfall, but secondly, the consent has been modified so that we can draw more water. So our water treatment plant can process 8 cubic metres a day of good drinking water, but we can't store it. That's the problem.
Yeah, because I find that it's good to get some solid knowledge on that, because there was a lot of speculation at the time and since, actually, up until now, like on what the actual issue was.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were like, yeah, it's a storage issue, there's not enough storage. And it's like, okay, but could storage solve it? Like, how much storage would we have to add to, like, would that be a viable option to like put a huge tanks in?
That's what the investigation is working on at the moment. I think it's imperative that we have, and I'd like to see 30 days of storage. And the thing is, in the winter time, when we're able to process 8 cube a day through the treatment plant, but we are only using 3 cube a day because a lot of people aren't here in the summer, then we take advantage of that time. We process that water, we store it, and then we can use it through the peak periods when we got 20,000, 30,000 people in town, all using the holiday homes or coming to the summer concert. So that's when the pressure goes on, and that's another thing with Three Waters. That's one of the issues that, and our current mayor Sandra Gowdy's raised this. I disagree with Sandra Gowdy on a lot of things, but I do agree with her on this. She's gone to the government and said, well, hang on, you guys have allocated us $16 million for our Three Waters contribution. Some of that money's already come in, and we've already started spending that money. So, but based on the population that we get at peak times, we should be getting more like 32 million. And Queenstown Lakes Council has done exactly the same thing. They've said, well, you've based your population count on census night. Now, on census night, the holiday owners aren't here, the summer crowds aren't here, and those people all flood in and summer and put pressure on our resources. We've got to pay for that. So if you're going to take the Three Waters and compensate us for that, then these are the numbers you need to be working on. So that's another thing that we've got to work on with the whole Three Waters thing. So a lot of work needs to be done on it.
Did you find any other lands for housing from the council? Because you guys did some research and found the land.
Yep.
Is there anything that involves housing?
In what area? This area or all across?
This area, yeah.
Yeah,
well, let's go for all across then, if you got something.
Yeah. So housing is a critical issue. We know that there's lots of houses being built and lots of development around here, but is it housing does it work for low-income people or trade people or teachers or service workers or elderly people on a fixed income? No, they're not going to buy $3 million mansions on the waterways. So we need to have a mix of housing. One of the things I've been working on, and I've got some really smart people in the community who have been working with me on this, I'm going to set up a task force to look at housing alternatives. And there are some places around the country and around the world that are really coming up with some fantastic, innovative ideas for getting people into affordable housing at a cost which is a lot lower than what's been presented to them at the moment. So co-housing options, low-cost housing for affordable levels for families. We've got to be looking at these options. But we need a task force specifically to look at what these are and come up with some options that work for us. Thames is absolutely critical for housing. They're really struggling. But the same here. Whitianga doesn't have a problem with building houses. It's just building the right kind of mix of houses for everybody in the community.
Do you think that they would? I brought this up last time too. Like, do you think that they would be actually affordable though? Like, do you think it's possible to get a land and house package that's affordable for an average?
Yeah, that's a good question, Brett. And some of the models that I've been looking at do provide those solutions. Now, some of the solutions mean that we look at a different model. So one of the models, for example, you don't buy the land, you don't own the land, you have a 100-year lease on that land.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so you have a house which would normally be $800,000, $900,000, and the family gets in there for $450,000. Now, they don't own the land, they've got a 100-year lease on the land, but that's them sorted for that period of time. And it's an unusual, it's not unusual, it's been done a lot in overseas, but we've got to be looking outside the square, because if we don't, and that applies to so many things, we've got to be looking at bringing innovation in to solve problems that, because we've always done it this way, but it's costing more and more and more. So works and services, and one of my favourite examples is I've been working a lot, as you guys know, is on the way we manage our solid waste. And I've set myself a target, and I've been quite open with people. I want to reduce the amount of waste going to landfill by 50% by 2024, the end of 2024. And I believe that we're absolutely on track to do that. Now, the reason I put end of 2024 is because Council's just about to sign a new solid waste contract for 10 years with a private contractor, and that contract doesn't start until the end of 2023. So the contractor gets a full year to get geared up with new trucks and things before the contract kicks in.
Is that a change? Is it?
It's a change.
Okay, it's not smart. Is it smart?
Well, that hasn't been revealed by council yet. So, but the old contract is finishing, and it'll end in September next year, and the new contract will kick in. Now, council haven't announced whether it's going to be. I think there were 4 companies tendering. They haven't announced who that company's going to be, so we don't know that yet.
No.
Are those changes or things that have to be done to reduce the waste? Are they targeting the community, the population, or also the people who sell us the products?
Yeah, so
that become waste.
So you've raised a fascinating question, which is the product stewardship question. So there's reducing waste operates on multiple levels. Some of those we have limited control over, and product stewardship is one of them. So
because they're billionaires running those companies.
Absolutely.
Well. You're welcome. The Truth. ALTBAYS Show. Sorry, Len.
That's all right. I love it. I love it. Can we do it again?
Yes. You're welcome.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers.
So, yes, that multiple levels. So we have to do our bit. So, as you know, we've got a resource centre being built in Mowai Road.
It's exciting.
It's very exciting, and there's been 2 years of hard graft gone into that, and I've got a whole team of people most of whom have worked a lot harder than me on this, and they've really put heart and soul into making this happen. We'll have that open in March, and that will focus primarily, first of all, on building and construction waste, and we know that in the first year we're going to keep at least 500 tonnes of building and construction waste out of landfill. And we had an e-waste drive, as you know, last December was our first one ever. 12,000 kilos of e-waste we collected in 2 days. And that's e-waste that would have ordinarily gone into landfill. So we know with one exercise in 2 days that we can reduce the amount of waste, toxic waste, going to landfill by a significant amount. Once we've got this facility open, and that's been a joint effort between council and community board, the Ministry for the Environment, who gave us $250,000 to build it. Council have been absolutely fantastic at working with us on this, and they've got a new solid waste manager, and so there's this whole new way of doing things. We've got soft plastic collection now in Whitianga, which is awesome. Just last week, I was on Friday. I was on a Zoom call.
Where does it go? Sorry.
Yeah, it goes to a company that makes fence posts. So, or fence posts and farm posts, support posts for agriculture. It's amazing stuff, and they can just take this soft plastic, turn it into fence posts, and they've got a 50-year life on them. So better than going in landfill or ending up in the ocean.
Yeah,
it's fantastic stuff.
It is good because you don't have to cut down a tree then as well. Well, I mean, you're still cutting the tree down, but
reusing is important. Sorry, I interrupted you, but I was just curious on that one.
Yeah. What? But it comes back to there's so many levels that you have to work on all at the same time. And I got a parcel and ordered some stuff online, and I do. We all do that from time to time. And I got something the other day, and it came, and it was a box, and I opened it up. No polystyrene. No bubble wrap. It was all
broken.
No, it wasn't. There was glass in there.
Oh gosh.
It wasn't broken, but the wrap was all paper and like shredded cardboard and stuff, and so every part of that packaging could be recycled. But that was rare. Most of the time, as we order something and we get the polystyrene and the bubble wrap, and then what do we do with this? So.
Have you seen those guys that make the packaging out of mushrooms?
No.
That was really interesting. Okay, and they get these mushrooms, and then they will have like a mold, and the mushrooms will grow and fill that mold.
Ah, yeah.
And so to shape, so you can put like your TV in there, all nice and snug. And it's all made from mushrooms, and they get the food for them from somewhere sustainable or whatever. But they grow like super, super quick. Like if you walk one day, there's a mushroom, no mushroom, and then 2 days later there's a mushroom. It's sort of like that. It's like bam, and they're pumping them out. I've seen it on YouTube. It's pretty impressive.
See, that's one of the things that I think, I'm really keen to get innovation hubs. High-tech innovation hubs going in the Coromandel, and that's one of the areas that I think we can really focus on is waste management or waste innovation, high-tech waste innovation. And I saw another company similar the other day that had a machine that when you want to buy something online and you send it, that there's your knife, you bought it online, and they can put that into a template and it will build a cardboard box, a one-off cardboard box, which fits that knife. They don't have to use one this size because that's the only size box. And it takes literally seconds with this, bespoke machine that'll build a box around the item that you're sending. Fantastic. Innovation like that really excites me, and I think we can do it with small spaces, good internet, great coffee. Away you go.
That construction waste you're talking about, keeping out of the landfill, will that be coming from skip bins, or is that just going to be general construction waste taken to the landfill?
No, we'll work directly with builders, and we will. At the moment, a lot of the skip bins don't even go to landfill here; they go all the way over to Tura here in Pairoa. So they're taking the skip bins straight over to landfill in Pairoa and dumping them there because it's more cost effective.
Yeah, old mate was telling us, Manus Pretoria says
Manus,
and he was telling us about it. I was like, it's pretty bad, especially still they're a little bit more efficient with their skip bins now that materials are a little bit harder to come by. But if you go back just 2 years, those skip bins were filled with straight treasures.
Everything in there. And you talk to Manus about what they're desperate to get hold of any sticks of timber, any building materials over in Thames. They'll take it all and they can sell it in a heartbeat. But you look at companies like Green Gorilla in Auckland, and they've gotten really specialised about their management of construction waste. So they have soft bags, which this bag is just for jibboard, and this bag is just for timber offcuts, and this bag is just for framing and joinery and glass and stuff like that. 5,000 kilos a day of nails and metal is what I read the other day that they were collecting. Green Gorilla, just from building sites, and 5 ton a day of nails and fastenings and screws.
Package it back up and sell it back to them.
Why not?
Wow. Yeah.
Use it again.
I've done heaps of building at home using just screws that are found on the ground and stuff.
Yep. And the good thing about these facilities, Seagull Centre is a good example, Coromandel, Kilt in Coromandel. When you have these run by a charitable trust, then all of the benefits and the proceeds go back into the community. So they're funding and financing scouts and school kids and school projects and all sorts of things. So it's all going back into the community. So it's fantastic. It's circular economy. Just keep things going around and stop stuff going into landfill.
Yeah, I can't wait for the one to start here. Yeah, it's great.
How long have you been living here, Len? For
13 years?
13 years.
13.
13, 1, 3. So speaking of knives, how do you see? It's a hot topic, right? It's getting more violent. Is it, or now we just have more access to information? And how do you see your time here and how communities are changing when it comes to crime?
That is something that is concerning all of us, and I think we're in an age where we're seeing the results of almost a perfect storm of social media, because a lot of the youth crime that's happening at the moment is being driven by the need for fame, and they're filming and photographing themselves and putting it on social media. Gang recruitment. A few years ago, I used to live in Chicago many years ago, and I saw firsthand what happened to communities if you had organised crime involved in those communities at every level. And I worked in a big hotel. I was quite young at the time, but I saw cops being paid off on the street, and I saw drugs influencing what was happening in that community on a daily basis. And it taught me a lesson, and I thought, I don't ever want to see that in my community, because it destroys communities from the bottom up, right up to the top. The growth of gangs in our community now is very disturbing, and it's something I think we need to hit very hard, and we have to do it.
How, Len?
So this is something that has to start at community level. And one of the things about drugs, for example, and gangs is that most people know it's going on. They know where it's happening. They know it's going on, but they feel powerless to stop it. Now, one of the things I did a few years ago, I was the district supervisor for the census, and so I had collectors out there, knocking on doors, counting, doing a census, and the census collectors all knew, because they were from the local area, they all knew which houses they couldn't go to or didn't want to go to, because that's where drugs were being dealt and that's where the gangs were. And so as their supervisor, I'd say, you don't go there. We don't want you there. It's not safe. So that was the thing that really hit home to me, is that the community knows where this activity is happening. So stopping it starts at community level, but then we have to work all the way through, and the police have to be resourced, and they have to understand that we don't want this in our community. Now, the problem that we have with the police activities at the moment is they tend to wait and research and surveil until they get to the big picture, and then they do the big bust and they crack down on that. The problem with that, and Leo, because you work in the school and Swago works in the school, all the teachers know that while they're waiting 2 years to do the big bust, there's a lot of damage gets done in the meantime. There's a lot of kids get hurt all the way through, and it hurts our community on every level. So how do we stop that, and how do we work with the police and the authorities? And my personal view is I don't want them to wait 2 years.
Could they be waiting 4 years? Do you reckon that's possible? Because I know of a place but I've been waiting 4 years for it to disappear.
Yeah.
that sells meth.
Interesting.
I just curious when you said 2 years, I was like, 2 years. Could have busted them twice by then.
But Len, with all respect, man, like I get this point and I hear that. I won't say that it's a politician talk because I've heard politicians saying different things, but like I see it as a bit of a surface fix. For me, it feels like a Band-Aid because I like to talk about the social gap that keeps stretching.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
So Taylor mentioned in the last show this thing with like, you know, a lot of us are dealing with anxiety and coming from 2 years of hard years, you know, like, and then you have access to some legal drugs that makes sometimes even much more damage than illegal ones.
Yep.
But it's not all the time that we hear people actually saying that we could go a bit deeper with what causing people to be so violent and for that to be out there in the community.
I think you make a really good point. And one of the things that I've heard recently is that there are moves to change the management of small-scale drug use from a criminal issue to a health issue. Right? So that's something I think is a positive. I would like to see...
Is this a national thing? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is.
National level?
Yep. So that's those steps are being undertaken at the moment, is my understanding from the government. So
is that a Labour initiative?
Yeah, it is. Oh. Yep. But it'll be driven and supported by a number of different agencies. So the health authorities and the police, and so there'll be a number of different groups and agencies working on that together with the government, because that's the way it should happen. So I think if you take the criminality from the people that are basically just struggling to get by, that are struggling to cope, and you focus on the ones that are exploiting people that are hurting, because that's where the real danger is, the real harm is done with these people that are exploiting people who are just struggling to get by day to day and making money out of them. If you put your focus on them and crack down on them, and as I said to you, when I saw what was going on in the States, I ended up with a very, very strong loathing is probably the best word for people that operate these gangs and sell drugs and these criminal activities purely for money and greed. I have no time for those people. And when I see it happening in this country, and I see the destruction that it can do to local communities and to ordinary people and to children, I just not having that. We've got to find a way around this. And a lot of it comes from supporting the people that are the victims right at the bottom of this as well. So they need to be supported, which is why I said it needs to start at community level. But just this blame the police getting tough on crime thing is a part of the picture, but it's not the whole picture. We all got to work together on this one.
Damn, look at me talking about the gangs, and feels like now I'm a gang defender.
It feels like
you are 100% a gang defender.
Well, no, but I think just before you say it, Taylor, just before you put your point across, I think the reason why we always play the devil advocates when it comes to gangs is because I've said this a few times here, and I don't have a problem repeating it. In Brazil, poor communities, they get a lot of help from those criminals that are part of it, because the only part of the government that visits them is the police to cause a lot of damage to those communities. So we're very used to seeing communities getting together to try to do something for the children, and the government giving their backs to them. And you only see the police going there, and sometimes they do good things, but most of the time they don't. And then you see kids actually appreciating the presence of the gang members. And I don't use the word criminal with gang members because not all of them are, but that's something I cannot put it in a big picture, as I was saying, like I cannot generalize them. But in this case, that they're trying to do something for the community because no one else is doing it.
I think you've watched too many Hells Angels documentaries.
Oh, you should come to Brazil with us then.
No, but we're not in Brazil here. That's the point.
But that's the thing with
the
the
government
social-
does nothing for anyone, really, unless you're in the top 1%, though, right? Like I've never. When you're like the government doesn't show up in the poor areas unless it's the police, like busting people's chops. Well, they don't show up in my area either. The government, I mean, or the police. It's just the gangs. In my opinion, there's no place for it. If these people are getting if the only place that these people are getting support for, what do you mean by these people? If the only place that people are getting support from is a gang, then I feel like that community needs to rally around themselves, not wait for a criminal organisation to come in and be like, we'll help you guys out, but we'll take all your strongest young men to sell drugs or to
what
beat up
happens
people,
is
or to rape people.
If you have a corrupt,
In my opinion,
political system and the corruption breaks down all services, you create a poverty vacuum, and then gangs step in and fill that poverty vacuum because they do help people out. And you've only got to look at places like Sicily, and lots of parts of Italy, and certainly in where those cultures were transposed into parts of the United States as well. That was where people got their social services from, was the mafia and the gangs. They filled a vacuum because there was no government support, there was no social structure, and whatever was there was corrupt. And that's the problem in Brazil, I think, isn't it? That there is so much corruption at government level, so that money that should be filtering down and working with people at the social level never gets to them. The vacuum is there and the gangs fill the vacuum. So
the problem with gangs, though, like with all their money that they might be putting into the community is gotten through exploitation. Like it's robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's not even a Robin Hood situation. You're taking the money from the poorest, most exploited people, and then pretending to support the community with it. But I don't know. Chad, hit us with your.
Nah, I think, like, in my opinion, I think the drugs and the gangs are two completely different problems. Like, even if gangs are the ones selling meth in New Zealand, I think that the problem of drugs and the problem of criminals, they are related, but not in this way. You shouldn't be solving the problem with the same technique. Like, it's not putting more police in the streets that's going to stop people stopping using drugs, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I think it would be better to be focused on giving a place for people who are addicted, go and use it there with the help of the government or whatever, with doctors. So then that would make the gangs weaker because they could go and do it probably for free or something like that, and I don't know, because like I never had a contact with gangs in New Zealand. So what I see is pretty much news, and ones are warriors, and probably what most of people on the table saw as well.
This table?
Yeah, because I think...
I did, well, then we can talk about that afterwards.
We can, but yeah, but like, I do believe there is a lot of good people in gangs, and I do believe that a lot of gangs goes for another purpose, like Black Panthers, like fighting Nazis in America back in the days, like, are they criminals? Maybe, but they have their own beliefs, so... It is hard I think it's very hard to judge and put everybody in the same ball when you're talking about gangs, because it's so many different gangs and so many different beliefs, like sometimes a gang just was created to fight another gang that wasn't a good gang or whatever, like, in my opinion, if you are part of a gang, you are probably losing part of yourself, as when you are part of anything, you lose part of yourself. But some people believe that they are stronger with other people as well, like, it's just a way to see the things. I just don't like when people generalize. It's like you're saying, oh, Brazilians are all thieves, like, nah, it's not, man, like, it's a lot of different Brazilians, and some people are for different reasons in gangs, maybe it's a mom who are concerned about his son in the gang, and she's in a gang, like, and she's a criminal. Maybe she's not.
Yeah.
But then you're also generalizing. not to generalize, but you're generalizing and saying, well, that all gangs are like, so the Black Panthers and the Black Power are two totally different types of gangs, right?
Yes.
What I'm talking about is like that 1% gangs, criminal organisation. I've got nothing against it. If there wasn't rape, extortion, abuse of drug dealing of the worst kinds, I don't care about weed and shit like that, but if there wasn't that sort of thing, then people probably wouldn't have too much of a problem with gangs. They'd be along your lines, I feel, and go, oh yeah, there are some nice people in there and they are doing great stuff. But when you talk to Kiwis who know people in gangs, the general vibe isn't that. But I will agree with you, Taylor, that there are probably some good people in gangs, just caught up in the wrong place.
Taylor's absolutely right. It's a complex, multi-layered problem, and there isn't a simple answer. And when I grew up, lots of people I knew were involved in gangs because that was their society. The difference now is that we've got gangs which are controlled and driven purely for money and drugs, and there are no limits.
What you mentioned about having all the people to deal with those issues, I think I read in New Zealand that they were considering putting a mental health person with the police officers when they go to a situation, so they obviously check if it's possible to have a dialogue, because sometimes people are so disturbed that it won't make any help to have someone wanting to have a chat, right?
I did hear that.
But in a lot of cases, that's all you need, because we have to be honest, not many people like police, especially in lower social classes. They're just not big fans, so as soon as they see that car coming or that person with that presence coming close, it's kind of like it's a trigger for a conflict. So I heard that, and I'm pretty sure it was in New Zealand, saying, let's try a different approach. A woman maybe, like someone who is, they're saying, look, I'm just coming to have a chat and assess the situation and see if we can do something. So I mentioned Brazil sometimes because that's my personal experience, it's something, wow, I would love to see that in my country. So when I see New Zealand considering something like that, it shows how forward thinking it can be. Sometimes we take it for granted,
We need to pump huge money into that, into the health sector. Do
you think so, Len? Do you think it would need a lot of money? I think it would need investment, but at the end of the day, it would turn because you would stop.
Investment to draw people into those areas, because I imagine it's probably a resource poor area. Like if you had to have health workers for all these areas, like to go with the police, to try and intercept people before they get into like hard drugs, or heavy drinking or whatever, to try and get all these bits. I've been thinking about it a lot over the last few months, and I'm like, I don't know how to draw people or draw the government into like wanting to really pump money into that area. Well, to get interest in that area, my only way I can think of is money.
The incentive is that the more that you can keep people out of hospital, out of care, out of institutions like jails. All of those things are ambulance at the bottom of the cliff stuff and really expensive options. If you get to that stage, you are spending a lot of money to pick up the pieces. If you can prevent that happening in the first place, then that's an investment in the future health and well-being of the people in all of society. So it helps everyone, but justifying that investment has been a challenge that has faced governments for decades and decades, because it's not sexy to pump money into prevention, and it's a tough one that governments and social agencies battle with again and again and again. But the argument's strong, There is actually a huge amount of money goes into working, especially with young people and people that work in schools will have seen that starting to change. There's a lot of money goes now into counselling and support.
I've had a few of them on here, eh?
Having nurses as well at school.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm not in that circle anymore, so I'm not the best person to talk to. But I just think investing in stopping the crash is a good investment in the long term, isn't it? Yeah.
Are we doing a good job by bringing Maori culture, Maori language back to the table? Should never have left, maybe, and now there's a push to bring that. How do you see that?
It's kind of not up to us to bring it back to there.
I know, right?
It's always, as you know, I'm part Maori. It's and it's something. If I go back to my childhood, I grew up in West Auckland, and at a time I left school in the mid-70s. And when I was at school, Maori teacher or te reo was not an option. You could not learn te reo. You were not encouraged to learn or speak te reo. The Maori kids that I was at school with only really spoke te reo on the marae, and they were not encouraged to speak it. I learned French and German at school. I would love to have learned te reo. If I look back now, I think, gee, that would have been good, because I'm learning te reo now, and it's tough. It's hard work. If I'd learned it when I was learning French and German, then I probably would have been a lot more confident with it now. I think we've got a rich culture that is part of our essence, part of who we are as Kiwis, and we haven't looked after it as well as we should. Personally, when it comes to the language and the music and the culture, I love it. One of the things that I think is really exciting is new music being written in te reo, because some languages lend themselves beautifully to music and some don't. German, for example, is not my favorite language when it comes to music. Italian, beautiful, right? But te reo is absolutely divine when it comes to the language of music. I'm finding it really fulfilling, being part of that and expanding. Because I said I learned French and German when I was at school, one of the things I learned is that if you learn another language, it expands your abilities and your horizons on every level. I think you're a better English speaker if you speak another language besides. And I'm surrounded by people who are multilingual. You two guys, your English is perfect, but you speak Portuguese as your native language. So
I can hardly understand Taylor, just for the record.
Just for the record?
I don't even know what our argument was about before.
Oh, God.
It's funny. That's really good you're saying that, because I was watching a YouTube clip last night from Sky News, and it had Winston Peters on it, and he was pushing back massively about the Māori language being used in New Zealand. Have any of you seen that? I don't know why it popped up in my algorithm. He was pushing back on like Māori place names, using the word, like using the name Aotearoa.
Which is sad, because he's Māori himself.
Yeah.
Sky News is
I'm sorry, he
famous
was not king. He was not supporting. Sorry. Oh, shit.
He's well known for that. Sky News is.
I didn't realise. I've never been a Winston Peters fan, but I was like, hell's bells,
He's famous for that.
How he justifies that point of view?
How did he justify?
Like why does he not agree? Does he have what's?
It was a reasonably. I don't remember. It was a pretty piss poor argument, to be honest. Because the Sky News, I've never watched Sky News before, for the record. It was on YouTube, but they sort of come across sort of like Fox News to me.
Well, they're owned by Fox News.
Oh,
they're owned by Murdoch.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well,
Sky News Australia.
Yeah. Sky News Australia. I'm talking about. Yeah. So the presenter on there was complaining about the Indigenous Australian names that we used in like the towns and these. No one can say them, he reckons. And then Winston Peters was on there, pretty much just saying the same thing, and saying things like, you know, like Aotearoa is that it wasn't even the Māori name for New Zealand, is what he reckons, and that it's only the North Island and doesn't include the South Island. And I was watching, I was just like, wow, like, I mean, he could be right for all I know, right? But it's the way it's portrayed. It makes you come across, you look like a bigot, you know? You look like a racist arsehole, to be fair.
I think that's a shame because, you know, and it is sad. We are seeing more and more of this divisive, angry language pushing back against use of te reo, which makes me personally very sad. I think it's not constructive, it's not helpful, it doesn't build a cohesive society, it doesn't keep us all together, you know, and I just think it's unfortunate. I don't know why it's happening. I personally think it's being driven by people like Fox and or outfits like Fox and Sky, but I just think it's unfortunate. It doesn't help us all come together and work together as a society. But you know, we are not one people. We are different people living together and honouring and respecting each other. That's how we should be. We shouldn't be dishonouring and disrespecting each other. That shouldn't be the way that we live together.
Well, there's no need for it anyway.
No,
you know, like one of the examples was a news lady, and she goes, you know, Kiri or Hamilton, whatever, and it's just like Winston Peters was just like throwing his hands in the air, you know, and I'm like, oh, God forbid you learn another name for a town, you know, like you don't have to call it that, just chill out and carry on your way, you know.
So how do they get on when they get to Whangarei or Tauranga or Kati or, you know, Rotorua?
I think they felt like they were being imposed on, you know, by a language, and it was, I don't know, each their own, I suppose, but I don't know if you need to go on international news to voice your opinion on that. Just leave it for the toilet.
I think it's unfortunate.
Do you feel like voters in it's hard to say in general, but like, do you think people understand that you might have a different opinion of them, but you're still looking for the best in their community? You know, because a lot of people vote with their heart. They don't use their their minds. Like I have this thing, because for years I thought that it was better not to vote, and then I realized, that I'm on a privileged position in life if I start to compare myself with a lot of other people out there. And then I started to realize that if life is okay for me, it could be better. You know, we always find reasons to be better, but like I'm pretty good where I am right now. Maybe I should use my vote for maybe like the person who needs the most that I know, you know, like, so I created this thing. I think like that. If I'm not too sure, if I'm not even too sure about who to choose, I would have a look and see who is defending or who is saying something that will be important for someone who is in real need, because probably that person cannot even read, you know, doesn't even know how to judge what is right or wrong, because politicians talk beautifully and simply when it's time to get voted, but sometimes they make it complicated after. But I think especially in this region, we deal with different ages and people who think very differently, and you are saying things very open from your heart. And do you feel like people who think differently than you, they still value the ideas that you have?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And when you go down the path that I've gone down, and you put your hand up and say, vote for me as the mayor, then one of the things that happens is people say, well, you know, what's your position on this, or Three Waters, or, you know, or what's your position on that, or what's your policy? And I spent quite a bit of time detailing those policies, writing them out, and I give these things a lot of thought. But when you get out and you talk to people, and you sit down or you go to election meetings, people are not so much interested in your policies. They want to know whether you're a person that they can rely on and trust to be honest with them and to be genuine. And if they can come away from a meeting believing that you are somebody that they can rely on and trust, then they're going to accept that you're going to do the right thing on the policy. And Three Waters is a good example because it is complex. You cannot answer Three Waters simply. You've got to, as a council and as a community, work through all the stages and make the best decision as a team at the time. So what they need is they need somebody that they know that they can trust to do that with their best interests in heart. So when you put your hand up to be a politician, your motivation has to be, I'm going to do the very best that I can for my community and for all of my community. And that means you are there for the people that you don't agree with, for the people that their policies and their beliefs and the things that they do you might not like, but you represent them anyway. You are there for all of your people, not just the ones you like and agree with, or your mates, or the ones that are rich and forget the ones that are poor. You're there for everybody. And that's the position that I come from. And I do my best in making the best judgments on the policies, but my motivation is what is the best for my people and my community, and that's where I start from, and that's where I finish.
Would you be a politician, Brett?
I think you asked me this last time, and I was like,
I'm just trying to see if you change your mind.
Yeah, no, I actually thought about it since you asked me that last time. He asked me if I would be a politician.
I remember that from Raglan days.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think I would be too inconsistent. I think I'd be too inconsistent to be a politician.
See, I disagree with you, Brett, and I'll tell you why. Because
I'm glad you're going to tell me why.
Well,
because I don't know.
Just yesterday, I was sitting down with two people who are who have put their hands up to be elected on our new community board. So we're going to have a new community board with 4 people that have never been on community board before. Now, 2 of those people are ladies who have been working in our community for a long time. They're family people. One is Bess Kingy. You know Bess?
Yep.
An amazing lady. And I've worked closely with Bess, and I'm almost certain that people are going to support her and I support her 100%. I signed her nomination. I want to see Bess Kingy on our community board. Billy Hunter. I want to see Billy Hunter on our community board. Chrissy Robinson, amazing lady. She owns the Wildwood, and she's a graphic designer, and the mini golf. Mm-hmm. So we've got some fantastic people coming through who have never been on community board before. And if you'd asked them 2 years ago, would you be a politician? They would have said, oh, no. But these are the community voices that we need, because they're going to make the decisions from the heart that is right for their people and their community. And they're connected with their families and their whānau and the people that they deal with every day. And we need those people to make the right decisions. We don't need the people who are making it because there's a monetary or political or power advantage in making those decisions. So we need to be connected with our community and the people that are making decisions. So that's why you'd make a good politician.
Oh, thank you.
You've got a good heart.
So maybe though, I really like to argue. I don't know if you noticed that. Maybe I'll just go down there. I mean, I'm sure there's enough arguing down there as it is, but maybe I'll just go down there and argue with them.
They would love it.
That'll just be my job.
Mate, you might meet your match.
Yeah. Well, I do jiu-jitsu with Billy, and I don't want to fight her, actually.
No, you don't.
She'll mess me up.
There's amazing people. There's just, and we haven't had that before. This is what excites me. We have not had that level of involvement before in our community board. It's the first time, and from where I sit, I just look at these people and I think, what amazing people. That's who we want. making the political decisions for our community.
New blood too, eh?
Absolutely.
But the only community board I know of is the one across the other side of the country, and some of those people sit in there for a long time, and they just argue across the table over and over and over and over, you know, month after month, same arguments, and it's like nothing's going anywhere, you know, it's just a stalemate.
But we can make some really, really significant changes in this community. And I'm not talking about change for change. So I'm talking about good stuff, you know, stuff that'll benefit all of us. And we talked about solid waste, but, you know, we need to tackle the shoreline management and the, you know, the sea level rise mitigation and all of the other things. You know, it goes right through from parks and reserves. We've got to have these decisions on these things that affect our community made at community level, and that's what I want to see happen.
Oh, maybe I'll think about it again in 3 more years, 5 more years.
I'll remember. We're knocking on your door.
You might start ALTBAYS party.
Yeah.
What do you think? We'll leave it for you to run.
No, you guys got to run. I'm terrible at running things.
Sorry, Len, I got a little bit curious about the sea levels, because that's probably a very important topic for us.
Yep.
Some people came here, can remember the name, but they said about, sorry, my microphone is too loud.
You almost knocked my computer. That's what happened.
Sorry.
Robin Kim Laurie was on the panel.
Yeah, and he was talking about going back, how do you call
retreat, managed retreat.
Yeah.
Yep.
And apparently a lot of the houses in the Buffalo Beach should not even be there anymore, right? Because of...
there are some houses on Buffalo Beach which are at risk depending on certain triggers. So if sea level rise follows a path, 200 millimetres, 400 millimetres, half a metre of sea level rise over a period of 20, 30, 50 years, then some of those properties that are on the beach side of the road are likely to be affected, and decisions will have to be made as to whether they are protected or whether they are, as you say, managed retreat, whether the community and the house owners have to, and quite often the insurance companies will be the ones that decide, no, you can't live here anymore because we're not going to insure you. So that is a process that, and as I said earlier, we've got 400 kilometres of coastline. Council has just done 3 years of this shoreline management panels that Kim was on. It's been a visionary piece of work, and it's a huge piece of work, and it gives us the tools that we need to make these decisions. And they're tough decisions. Some people will have houses that they can't live in the future. It's not as bad as what people think at the moment, but as we've just got to keep an eye on, you know, carbon emissions, because and as we see those carbon emissions rise and sea level rise affecting us more and more, we have to make some decisions. In some parts of the district, those decisions are more urgent than others. Thames, for example, Moana-Tairi, which is just outside of Thames, which is built on mine tailings, reclaimed land. Te Puru, just north of Thames, they are quite urgent because they can get overtopped and they can flood tomorrow if we get a storm event. For us, we've got a little bit more time. We've probably got 20 or 25 years to make those decisions, but the work has been done now, which is really good. The money involved is quite significant, which is why we've got to be planning. And I've been very, very diligent about researching this, going to the meetings, having a look at what's involved, because it's a huge amount of money and it has a massive effect on all of our communities. Yes, you're right to be concerned about it, but we have the tools in the toolbox to manage it properly, I think.
And about mining, Len, what is your taking on mining? Because very polemic topic here.
Yeah, it is.
I heard you love it.
Okay, so
Mining Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Here is the position that I've put my hand up to be the mayor of Thames-Coromandel. If I'm elected the mayor of Thames-Coromandel, then any proposals to mine in the Coromandel that come across my desk, I have to look and evaluate those proposals in a completely objective way. I have to be neutral. If I'm not neutral, then I'm not sure that you guys are aware of this, but a few years ago, the mining company took Thames-Coromandel district councillors to court and said, you guys cannot be involved in this decision-making process because you have previously stated that you are against mining. So therefore, you are not allowed to be legally involved in this decision-making process. And so the mining companies have a lot of money. They can go to court and they can hire the best lawyers, and that's exactly what they did. So all of the Thames-Coromandel district councillors who had publicly opposed mining were no longer allowed to be part of that decision-making process.
So how come you have to be completely objective about that? Why can't you have an opinion? When it comes across your desk though, and you're like, I have to be objective about this. What's like? We live in a democracy, don't we? Don't you? You can have your own thing and go, I don't like this, and I don't. What are all things that come across your desk you have to be objective about?
So you are governed by the laws. The Local Government Act is the primary one, but there's 100 different acts of Parliament that determine the process of local government. So we are a democracy. We can have an opinion on anything, but when you're involved in the decision-making process, you have to follow the laws that determine that process. And in that case, they were able to take a court case which said, we expect you to be objective in making these decisions. You have proven that you are not, therefore you can't be involved in that. And the law is worded in such a way that the mining company was able to win that one.
So what representative of ours would be able to stand up against a mining company?
If you're in an elected position,
that would be the MP, like that'd be Scott Simpson, would be the one who would be like, hey, no, this isn't.
I can't answer that question.
Because I know he stated on here he was anti-mining in the Coromandel Peninsula itself, at least.
So if you're in a position where your decision-making directly affects the ability of the company to operate their business, then that probably puts you in a position where you have to be objective, or you can be legally challenged in the courts.
I find that very I find that very confusing.
It sounds like a conflict of.
Like I understand it's probably from a. That law's that's been put in place, right, to protect. Like it's a blanket to protect all the things coming through, not obviously just mining. It just so happens that mining rocks on it, and like I find that very bizarre. Like,
yeah, I think you probably find that it's the law involved, and I'm not a lawyer. Probably affects a number of different things, but in this case, it was applied to mining. And it goes back a few years, but it's something that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
So I remain objective. I guess if we were having a roundtable discussion and we look at the beautiful Coromandel, do we want to see it mined? Really?
Yeah, I think the answer is pretty plain.
There's
only probably a handful of people that be pro mining in the Coromandel Peninsula in there.
And I think the other thing is you'd
have
to ask.
Way more.
Yeah.
Just keep it cool.
I thought it'd just be a couple of miners. Like I'd love to work locally.
Nah, man.
The reality is, the big mine processing facility is in Waihi, okay, which is not in Thames-Coromandel district. Anybody that was going to mine in the Coromandel have two options. They would have to either do their mining and truck all the material down to Waihi for processing, or they would have to build a processing facility within the Thames-Coromandel district. Now, what do you think the chances are that they would get a gold mine processing facility built within the Thames-Coromandel
So
district?
it's pretty slim.
That's it. So, I mean, and if you're a business owner or, Oceania or whoever, would you want to do that? You'd do a risk analysis and think, okay, the amount of opposition to building this facility in the Thames-Coromandel district, is it worth the risk? And if I was a business owner, I'd be looking at that fairly hard and saying, well, why would I want to do this? You'll have every person in the Coromandel standing up at your gate saying, please don't do this, when they wouldn't be polite about it either. So why would you want to do that as a business owner? It just doesn't make sense to me. So.
That's good. Have we getting good feedback on this show about mining, to be honest, eh?
Yeah, we've heard both sides of the story, for sure. It's just interesting how, it doesn't mean that you cannot oppose a proposal. It's just you have to check the legal aspects of it, right? It goes through the legal process.
That's right. So if I was the mayor, I could listen to all of the arguments and the consent applications, and I could be part of that process. And at the end of that process, I could make a decision, yes or no. But if I started the process by saying, whatever you guys do, I'm against it, then I have disqualified myself.
Yeah.
And that is not allowed.
It's almost sort of like a jury kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good analogy, actually. Yeah.
You're the one who came up with that.
So you should
you shot it. You shot it into my mind, and it just came up.
You should be a politician.
There you go. We'll put Brett there, man. In 3 years, we're just building his following,
building up
first.
his profile. That's how it
yeah.
happens.
The gang members won't vote for him, but all the others will.
Yeah.
Len, it's been a pleasure, my friends. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
This is cool.
Thank you for the food.
Oh yeah, by the way, it's ice cream time because of course a lot of love. They make the most amazing desserts as well. So, oh yeah, I'm gonna. Oh, not for you, Brett?
I'll eat it. Fuck it. Ice cream is like my nemesis.
Wife cannot eat rice.
Yeah, she made her own way as well. Yeah.
So just before we finish this, I just have to show how beautiful.
Oh wow!
This is. This one is double chocolate ice cream, homemade, plant-based.
Double chocolate is 100% my favourite.
Gorgeous packaging too. Look at that.
Hey, look at this.
So hey, are these cats? Are they? Where are they operating at? Is it all just like literally homemade?
Yeah, she got the. I think there's a license or something to make it.
Imagine so.
To make a business because she runs cooking classes, plant-based cooking classes. So she had to go through all the legal aspects of cooking at home, and she also sells the product. So yeah, and again, we are keen to have sponsors that we believe in. So
yeah, keep coming.
Sounds like it's something that we're gonna do right now. So thanks, Len.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Brett.
No, you're welcome.
Taylor.
Thank you, Taylor.
Thank you so much. I will see you guys on Wednesday at 7 p.m. and on Friday at 7 p.m. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and peace.